This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the wonderful folks at the GSMC Podcasting Network. I am your host, Josh Strickland, and we have a show for you. It is not a bad show. It is not a great show. It is, in fact, a show. So, no, it's going to be a great show. So, we're going to discuss LeBron versus Zion 2. We're talking about that matchup again. LeBron had a great game last night. Then we'll move on to the New York Yankees, talk about their injury issues going on at the moment. Then we'll talk about some NFL with the Jaguars giving some new ideas of what they're going to do for the rest of the season. Then we're going to talk about the Redskins and their kind of draft. They're playing draft chess at the moment. Then we'll move on to the XFL. I'll talk about the XFL in general, just how it's going so far as Week 4 just ended, and then I'll move on to my weekly XFL Power Rankings, which I know everyone loves and adores. So, let's start it off. Let's talk about Zion versus LeBron again. So, I did talk about this, I think, on the Thursday show, but they played again Sunday night. And, man, everyone hypes up this matchup, but this game actually kind of lived up to the hype, in my opinion, and I really would like to see these two teams play in the playoffs, and especially in the first round. Although, I mean, I'm sure some people are sick and tired of hearing that assessment, but I mean, I genuinely feel that way. I mean, it would be a very exciting matchup to watch just because Brandon Ingram's having a really good year and Lonzo Ball's having a good year, and then Zion has knocked everyone's expectations out of the water so far in his young career. I think he's played like 10 or so games, something like that, and he's been playing fantastic. But there is something about playing the new generation of players like Luka Doncic, Trae Young, Zion Williamson, of course. There's something about playing these younger guys that are poised to take over the mantle from LeBron James. There's just something about that really invigorates LeBron James. So the Lakers won 122 to 114, and this game was in New Orleans this time. The last game was in Los Angeles, and this was the last game that these two teams will play in the regular season. LeBron had a triple-double. He had 34 points, 12 rebounds, 13 assists. He also had 2 steals on the game. He was 3 from 5 from the three-point line, and he had a plus-minus of plus 22 when he was on the floor. These numbers are insane. This is a 37-year-old guy who is still playing to the best of his ability. Still playing up to his. He's still kind of in his prime, if you really think about it. Of course, you have the groin issues that has kind of. He sat out one game because of groin issues. But he came back in this one and got a triple-double, and he just played a masterful game. There was one sequence where Zion had a huge dunk, and then right down the court, LeBron goes and just hits a 3 right in front of everyone's faces. So LeBron had a lights-out game. He's not the only one. Kyle Kuzma had 20 points, 4 rebounds, and Kyle Kuzma was a plus 11 on the floor. But what about the Pelicans? What about the young guys on the Pelicans? Zion went 35 points. He had 35 points, so not a bad game at all, especially for a guy who's only played 10 or so games in the NBA. He also had 7 rebounds. He had no assists. He was at minus 10 when he was on the floor. Then Brandon Ingram had a pretty solid game with 15 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. And then there's another player that was oh so close to having a triple-double, and that was Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball had 19 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists. He was close to a triple-double there. So at the end of the day, the Pelicans, I feel like, just don't have the firepower to beat the Lakers, especially in the regular season, and I think more so in the playoffs. Honestly, when we get to the playoffs, as everyone knows, playoff LeBron is a completely different entity. Of course, he wasn't last year, but I mean, LeBron actually in the playoffs, completely different entity. The Lakers are poised to take that number 1 seed at the moment as they just keep winning and the momentum's gaining on them. And there's also rumors going around they might pick up LeBron's favorite person in J.R. Smith, as he is on the market at the moment. So the Lakers, number 1 seed in the West at the moment, and that's not looking to change at all. They might, I mean, if they have a rough patch in these last 20 games or so, then they could drop down to number 2 behind the Clippers, but that's still not that big of a deal. I think they're playing at such a high level right now that it's going to be difficult to stop the Lakers going into the playoffs. Now, some people are still saying that the Clippers are probably going to that the Clippers overall could win the Western Conference and make it into the NBA Finals. I'm still kind of subscribed to that theory at the moment, just because without LeBron on the floor, the Lakers are kind of just, they're not there. And LeBron is, like I said, he's 37. He can't play the entire game. He played 30 or so minutes in this game, but in the playoffs, he'll definitely play more, probably, but he can't play the entire game. So teams are going to kind of take advantage of when he's not on the court, because when he's not on the court, then all hell breaks loose for the Lakers. They have no offensive identity or anything like that. They try to play through Anthony Davis, but sometimes that doesn't work out too well. But what about the Pelicans? So the Pelicans, they got swept. They played the Lakers 4 times in the regular season. They got swept, lost all 4 games by not double digits every time, so good for them. But they fall to 26-34 on the season. They are 3 games behind the Memphis Grizzlies for that 8th seed. They could still make the playoffs, and Zion could play in the playoffs in his first year, which everyone would love, of course. But what we're dealing with right now is that the Pelicans kind of need to get things going a little bit more. And, of course, they played the Lakers, who's the best team in the Western Conference, so you can't really expect much out of that. But 3 games behind the Grizzlies. There's still plenty of games to play. The Grizzlies have kind of cooled off a little bit here after they had a surprising first half of the season. They're starting to cool off a little bit, so the Pelicans are definitely poised to take over that 8th seed and maybe play the Lakers in the first round of the playoffs, which everyone wants that. Everybody, because these past 2 games between the Lakers and the Pelicans have been interesting. I mean, the Lakers won both of them, of course, but LeBron showed out. Anthony Davis showed out in that first game. I think he did not play in this one. And if he did, he didn't make that big of an impact on this one. But Zion played great in the past 2 games. So it's interesting. But there's another topic I wanted to touch on about Zion Williamson. Is Zion or Ja Morant for Rookie of the Year in the NBA? I've seen some people talk about this on Twitter, that if Zion leads the Pelicans to the playoffs, he should win Rookie of the Year, and some people are saying that Ja Morant should win Rookie of the Year because he played the whole season, and it's an interesting argument, of course. I'm on the side of Ja Morant should win because I don't think you should win Rookie of the Year if you don't play most of the year. It would be kind of a disservice to Ja Morant because Ja Morant's been playing so well this entire year, and then you just have Zion, who's kind of the most hyped guy, of course. I mean, everybody knows Zion. If Zion played for the whole year, he would easily be Rookie of the Year. It wouldn't matter what his stats were during a certain period of time or whatever. But I know someone showed 2 different stats on Twitter, and he asked, like, which one would you choose for Rookie of the Year, and everybody chose the one Zion's numbers. But my thing is, Zion's played 40 less games than Ja Morant or something like that, so we still have a very small sample size for Zion. He has blown expectations out of the water so far, but it's still a very small sample size, and we'll see how the rest of the season goes if he does lead them to the playoffs. I still don't think he should win Rookie of the Year, though. But I am proud, as a proud South Carolinian, I said that completely wrong, South Carolinian, that two guys who are up for Rookie of the Year, both from the state of South Carolina. Neither of them went to my college of choice. But it's exciting. South Carolina basketball is getting better and better, as Dorman Cavaliers are going to be playing in the that's a high school in South Carolina. They're going to be playing in a nationwide high school basketball tournament coming up here soon. So South Carolina basketball is on the rise. But when we return, we will be talking about New York, the Yankees. They've had some injury problems in the past couple of years, and we're going to discuss that at length when we come back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
The Yankees signed Giancarlo Stanton 3 years ago. This is going to be his third season with the Yankees. So they traded for him. They traded for him from the Marlins. Took on that huge contract, which was like a 13-year, $500 million contract or something like that. So they got him from the Marlins, and ever since then, you had the emergence of Aaron Judge. You had Tanaka knocking it out, J.A. Happ. They picked up Garrett Cole in the offseason here. You also have other big players that have come from Yankees. The Yankees have been on top, have been one of the best teams in the American League the past 3 years. But there's one big issue with the New York Yankees. And that big issue is injuries. There is no hiding it. The Yankees do have an injury problem. It seems like every year the Yankees have injuries to their biggest players. Aaron Judge, Stanton, James Paxton, Luis Severino is the newest one. It seems like there's always an injury bug going around the Yankees, and I don't know if it's strength and conditioning or these players are just pushing themselves, or it's just a string of extreme bad luck going on. But the Yankees could have easily destroyed the entire league if they stayed healthy these past couple years, because they've clearly had one of the best rosters the past couple years, and they just keep getting hit with the injury bug over and over and over, and it's the biggest what if you can really talk about. Everybody talks about 2017 when the Astros cheated, screwed the Yankees out of the American League playoff, out of the American League championship game, and then went to the World Series and stuff like that. Then of course you had last year as well, which was the same outcome pretty much. It's crazy to me. So Stanton played a little bit in 2019. He played a couple games. I think there was only a handful of games that he played where he was not injured, but he was injured throughout the entirety of the 2019 season. He had a bicep issue, then a shoulder issue. And then recently he strained his calf in spring training. Now, straining your calf, that's only about a month. It's only about a month of your time. You only have to spend a month rehabbing on that. But it is deflating when you are ready for this new baseball season, you're ready, you think you're done with these injuries, and you get another injury. So it's got to be deflating for Stanton there. It's definitely deflating for the New York Yankees, which, once again, he is entering his third season with the Yankees, and he's been heavily injured in the first 2 seasons that he was with them. When he did play, yeah, he got the home runs that you expect him to get, but he was also a strikeout machine and getting strikeouts all over the place. It's kind of same thing with Aaron Judge as well. Aaron Judge got a shoulder injury before entering camp for the Yankees this year, and now there's a bunch of mystery going on with that shoulder injury. The Yankees won't disclose any information. Aaron Judge won't disclose any information. People are worried that it's a severe injury and he might not play for the first half of the season. So there you go. You knock out Aaron Judge, you knock out Stanton. That's two of your best outfielders out before the season even starts for the Yankees. And this is the main reason they lost in 2018. 2018 they lost the division to the Red Sox and stuff like that. The Red Sox, of course, had one of the best teams in the league that year, but the Yankees gave them all they could handle, but the Yankees always had injuries. Now you move into pitching. Luis Severino, he was a Cy Young finalist in 2017, put together a 2018 season that earned him a 4-year, $40 million extension, and he was out all of 2019 with a shoulder and a lat injury, and then he got notified this past week that he will now have to get Tommy John surgery, which will end his 2020 season before it even starts. So that's that's another pitcher down for the New York Yankees, as James Paxton was also injured and had some surgery in the offseason. So this leaves 2 empty spots on the Yankees opening day rotation, leaves 2 empty spots in the outfield on their opening day roster. And if you're a Yankees fan, you're just kind of sitting there and it's like, when does this end? What is the issue here? There is a huge issue with this injury prone, this injury bug always hitting the Yankees, because I feel like every single season, the Yankees are poised to be the best team in the American League, easily be World Series favorites and stuff like that, but then they get injury after injury after injury throughout the entire year. And everybody, baseball's all about staying healthy. It's 162 games, the season's a grind. It's all about trying to stay healthy. Now, of course, there will be times when you just need a break, like you're tired, or there's like a small strain that you need to deal with that only takes a week or so to deal with, and that stuff is fine. But if you're out for months at a time, that really affects your baseball team. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Yankees deal with that. Like I said, they have 2 opening day rosters. They did sign Garrett Cole, which should help with the rotation. He will definitely be the opening day starter. Masahiro Tanaka is still there, and J.A. Happ is there. J.A. Happ, I think, is just recovered from an injury of his own. So we'll see how the Yankees do. Of course, it's still spring training. The season doesn't start until late March, so there is a chance that Stanton heals up and is perfectly fine, and there's a chance that Aaron Judge's shoulder is not as big as a deal as it is appearing to be. We will find out when the season starts. But I just thought it was very interesting that the Yankees just keep getting these injuries over and 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 over again. Just non-stop injury news coming out of the Yankees camp. And they had a pretty good offseason, building up this roster with free agents, like I said, Garrett Cole, and the Yankees are poised to be the best team in the American League, in my opinion. They have the rotation for it if James Paxton comes back healthy, and if James Paxton comes back healthy, you have 4 guys, and I'm sure they have a 5th guy that they can pull up from their minor league system. They could easily be a favorite for the World Series, as the Red Sox have kind of conceded this season after trading Mookie Betts. Tampa Bay was a surprise last year. Tampa Bay is supposed to be really good again this year, so that seems like it's going to be the Yankees' big challenge in the division there. After that, the Astros are still poised to be pretty good, even though you have the grind of being booed constantly every single game, as we've seen in spring training. And spring training, for people who don't know about spring training baseball crowds, spring training baseball crowds are people who really like baseball, and it's mostly an older crowd because it's in Florida. It's mostly an older crowd, and basically, if they're booing you, that means you are going to get ruthlessly booed. Especially when the Astros go to New York and face the Yankees in the Bronx. That's going to be an interesting thing to watch. But overall, Yankees, they should be poised to win the American League, or at least be predicted to win the American League. Weird things happen, especially with the White Sox. The White Sox had a really good offseason. The Padres are in the National League. Don't know why I brought them up. The Angels had a really good offseason as well, getting some help for Mike Trout over there. So it's going to be the American League's looking interesting. Once again, but the Yankees should still be favored, especially if everyone is healthy. But it's looking like they're not going to be healthy. So I'll do an official prediction show once we get closer to the actual season starting, which I think it starts like March 27th or something like that, late March. But when we return, we'll be talking about something interesting, a new piece to the quarterback offseason puzzle, which I'm sure you're going to love to hear. I love all this offseason speculation, but I will talk about it in the next segment when the Jaguars throw their hat into complicating everything on the offseason. When we return.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So as I mentioned before we went to the break, there is a new piece to the QB offseason puzzle. And that's crazy because we're already dealing with like a 1,000-piece puzzle. The corner pieces are out. We're still looking for the corner pieces. I think we're missing one somewhere. We can't find it. Like, where's the Tom Brady piece go? Where we got the Colts spot right here. Who's going to the Colts? What piece is going to the Colts spot? Jameis Winston. Where does that piece go? Marcus Mariota. Where's that piece? Ryan Tannehill. Is he going to stay in place? We have crazy offseason coming up. Which once again, I think the offseason you can start making offseason acquisitions starting March 18th. That's when free agency opens up for the NFL. So it's coming, and I will keep speculating until it comes and I officially have news to talk about, which I'm sure everything's going to happen all at once that week, and I'm going to spend one show discussing it, and then the rest of the time I'm just going to be like, yep, so that happened. Just keep reiterating myself, kind of like what I'm doing right now. But we have a new piece to this quarterback puzzle. The Jacksonville Jaguars threw their hat in. There are rumors going on that the Jaguars want to start Gardner Minshew and trade away Nick Foles, Nick Folian Dynamite. So, in case you didn't know, Nick Foles, he led the Philadelphia Eagles to their Super Bowl victory a couple years ago, and then right after that, he signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars for a huge contract to play for the Jaguars. His first game with the Jaguars, I think he got injured, and then Gardner Minshew started, and Gardner Minshew was a fan favorite from the get-go. He didn't play the best, but he had the effort, and he had the kind of, I don't like saying this, but he had the win factor, kind of the same as Deshaun Watson, where he does what it takes to win. He will make mistakes that kind of screw you out of the game, but he does what he thinks it takes to win the game. And that's what Gardner Minshew does. If you watch Gardner Minshew play, you can tell he's giving 110% every play, and he is trying to push the Jaguars to the victory. And he is also the most perfect Jacksonville quarterback. I mean, Gardner Minshew is up there with Florida legends like Florida Man and stuff like that. He wears jorts willingly. He's from Mississippi. He belongs in Florida. So Jacksonville, they're giving their prodigy quarterback, I guess you can call him, a chance to start for a full season to see how he does. I think he went like 6-6 or something like that, 5-5. He had like a 500 record with the Jaguars. And when Nick Foles came back from injury, Nick Foles kind of didn't play very well, and they went back to Gardner Minshew and benched Nick Foles. Now, here's the issue with this, though. Nick Foles has this gigantic salary. Who is going to take on this gigantic salary? Of course, so the Jaguars are going to have to pay for that signing bonus. They're probably going to have to front a lot of the money to get this trade done. Also, who's going to take Nick Foles? Nick Foles is just a name you didn't really expect to be out here in this QB puzzle that we're trying to piece together. Because Nick Foles, he did lead the team to the Super Bowl, but you know who else did that? That was Joe Flacco. And there's a lot of similarities between Nick Foles and Joe Flacco, where they show signs of greatness, but then after that, they're kind of iffy. You know, they won Super Bowls, but after they won that Super Bowl, they were kind of out. I'm just saying there's a reason that Carson Wentz still started over Nick Foles after Nick Foles led the team to a Super Bowl. So Nick Foles is kind of in this void right now where the Jaguars want to trade him, but who would want to take on that salary, especially with all the other quarterbacks available? Like, if you wanted to sign a good quarterback and take on a huge contract, why not get, you know, a Tom Brady or a Phillip Rivers or a Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, Teddy Bridgewater? There's so many names out there that Nick Foles just kind of gets lost in the shuffle. I feel like if this was a regular offseason where there wasn't a billion quarterbacks on the market, then this would be a completely different scenario. I feel like the Bears or the Colts or someone would take a chance on it and go for the Nick Foles experience. But the issue with that is there's just too many quarterbacks on the market at the moment, and we don't know where any of them are going. We don't know, like I said, this is a huge puzzle. We don't know where any of the pieces going. We're losing corner pieces. Like, we don't know where any piece is going. And we just don't know. And adding in Nick Foles kind of leaves Nick Foles out to dry. So I feel like the Jaguars are probably not going to be able to trade him. They're probably going to have to eat that cost and just have him as a backup quarterback if this rumor is really true, and just go ahead and start Gardner Minshew and just go with it. I mean, it could be a lot worse because if Minshew goes down, you have a capable backup. You're paying this capable backup way too much money. That's why when he got back from injury, they played him, because you're not going to pay someone that much money to sit on your bench. And I understand that issue, but the Jaguars definitely have that issue going on right now. So Gardner Minshew, he had a great year last year. Let me look up some stats real quick. So I searched Gardner and I got Brett Gardner. So yeah, I believe he played like 12 games. He appeared in 14 games. So he played in 14 games. Wow, he's only a couple months older than me. Wow, that's crazy. So he played in 14 games, and in those 14 games he went 285 completions out of 270 attempts. He threw for 3,271 yards, had 21 touchdowns, only threw 6 interceptions. His longest pass was a 70-yard touchdown pass. He was sacked 33 times, though. His QBR is not the best. His QBR is a 45.2. So he still had a solid year. And I'm trying to find... He still had a solid year, honestly. I mean, the Jaguars went 6-10. I mean, they didn't have a lot going for them, really. So yeah, Nick Foles started 4 games. Yeah, Gardner Minshew, he started 12 games, went 6 for 6. Nick Foles started 4 games, went 0-4 in those 4 games, had 736 yards in those 4 games, and got sacked 8 times, threw for 2 interceptions, 3 touchdowns to 2 interceptions in 4 games. So the offense just wasn't moving with Nick Foles at quarterback. But with Gardner Minshew, it seemed like they kind of got things going there, and they went 6-6. I mean, they did have that 4-game losing streak in the middle of the season, towards the end of the season there. But I remember he went in, won a couple games, ended up 6-6. But bottom line is they went 6-10, so that means he won all 6 of their wins there. So I think sticking with Gardner Minshew is a good idea for the Jaguars. And Nick Foles, like I said, the offense just wasn't going. If they improve that offensive line, because 33 sacks in 12 games is a lot. I think it's almost 3 sacks a game, which is not good. And, of course, some of those could have been Minshew's fault, because Minshew did like moving around in the pocket. He was trying to make some plays happen, which he made plays happen a lot. So Gardner Minshew is up there with... He's a surprise young quarterback. I mean, people didn't expect him to do well. I mean, he played for Washington State. He set some records for Washington State, but those records are always inflated because of the Mike Leach offense. Like, for instance, Aaron Gordon, he has literally every single season passing record in the Pac-12, but will he be a good NFL quarterback? That's a different topic for a different day. That's just another piece to this quarterback puzzle that we are trying to piece together. Now, I know you hate me talking about puzzles, but when we return, there is yet another puzzle piece being added to this. We just keep getting more and more and more, and I hate it so much. This offseason just keeps happening. When we return, we'll be talking about the Redskins. Are they bluffing about their intentions in the draft? We got some draft chess maneuvers going on as I continue making board game references when we return.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So I spent the whole last segment talking about puzzle pieces. Now we're moving into chess. We're changing the board game here. We're going to move on to chess, and there's a huge chess move going on right now in the NFL draft, and the Redskins are making their play. So there's a rumor going around. During the Combine, the Redskins were meeting with Joe Burrow, they were meeting with Tua Tagovailoa, they were meeting with Justin Herbert, and the top QB prospects to come in the NFL draft. They were meeting with all these prospects, and it's very interesting that they're meeting with all these guys because they drafted Dwayne Haskins last year to be their quarterback, and now the Dwayne Haskins experiment has not worked out so far, as first off, I don't think it's necessarily Dwayne Haskins' fault. It's just that he's on the Redskins, and the Redskins are not very good. But that's okay. He started 7 games. He went 119 for 203 with a 58.6% complete percentage, 1,365 yards, 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He had a QBR of 26.8. He was sacked 29 times in 7 starts, and those sacks had a net loss of 204 yards. So Dwayne Haskins, now obviously not all of that is completely his fault, but at the end of the day, Dwayne Haskins, the experiment is not working, and now the Redskins have a new coach. They got a new GM as well. So the Redskins are kind of making some sweeping changes going on right now, and one of those changes might be at the quarterback position. They might be drafting a quarterback. So they met with all these quarterback prospects over the combine, the week of the combine, and apparently they took a lot of interest in one Alabama quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. So there are two moves that could come out of this, and both of them kind of make sense for the Redskins. The first move is that they could actually draft Tua Tagovailoa. They could actually draft him, and they'll have a quarterback for the foreseeable future if he's healthy, if that hip is good. I mean, of course, these NFL doctors got to look at him, and if they think he's perfectly fine, then he's probably perfectly fine. So they have a chance at getting Tua Tagovailoa and potentially having a franchise quarterback. And then they can trade Dwayne Haskins, which Dwayne Haskins is probably worth a 3rd round, maybe a 2nd round pick. The ceiling is probably a 2nd round pick. Now, the second one, and this is where the chess comes in, is that they might be trying to get Miami to trade up. They might try to trade with Miami. Miami has 3 first-round draft picks in this upcoming draft, so they can make room. They can trade away one of those to move up, if they need be. So the Miami Dolphins could trade up, trade the Redskins one of their other first-round picks, and the Redskins can trade back and gain an extra pick. And then Miami can draft Tua, and the Lions win in this. Both scenarios, the Lions win pretty much, because the Lions get to draft Chase Young, which that's another big question. Would the Redskins actually pass up on Chase Young, possibly the best defensive player in the draft? It's between him and Isaiah Simmons. Chase Young's gotten all the draft hype so far, and it's very apparent that teams like him, but everyone was it was kind of known that the Redskins were going to draft him at number 2. Joe Burrow was going to go number 1, and then Chase Young was going to go number 2 because he would have been the best player available. In fact, Chase Young would probably be the number 1 pick if the Bengals weren't picking, if the Bengals weren't looking for a quarterback, and if Joe Burrow didn't come out of the woodwork this past year. So Chase Young will then be available to get picked up by the Lions. Now, of course, why is this a good move for the Redskins to pass up on Chase Young? Well, the Redskins have drafted a defensive lineman in the 1st round in the past 3 drafts. So they're kind of set on defensive line, at least for another year or so. So they're kind of set at defensive line. They don't necessarily have to draft Chase Young. They could trade back, gain another pick potentially, because they don't have a pick after the number 2 pick overall. They don't have a pick until the 3rd round, so they could get an extra pick, make up for that lost 2nd round pick, and fill bigger holes that they need, like left tackle or anywhere on the offensive line, or like I said, getting a quarterback. But the Redskins have a lot more holes than just defensive line. So, Miami, will they fall for this? Will they call the bluff here? will they call the Redskins' bluff? Obviously, the Dolphins want a quarterback. They don't have a quarterback at the moment. They have Josh Rosen, and Josh Rosen, meh, and they have Ryan Fitzpatrick that played a little bit this year. So they definitely want a quarterback this year. But where is it? Is it worth it? Miami Dolphins, they have the 5th pick. Here are the top 5 picks, by the way. You got the Cincinnati Bengals, Washington Redskins, Detroit Lions, New York Giants, and then the Miami Dolphins. And then right after that, you have the Chargers and the Panthers and the Cardinals and those teams like that. So it really depends on if the Dolphins think that the Redskins are going to go for it, go for Tua. Because if I think this rumor is just going around so the Redskins can try to bait the Dolphins, because the Lions don't need a quarterback. The Giants don't need a quarterback. The Giants drafted a quarterback last year in Daniel Jones. So the next team that needs a quarterback on there is the Dolphins. Of course, they could try to trade with the Chargers or the Panthers if the Panthers decide that getting another quarterback and kind of building towards the future if Cam Newton doesn't work out. They could try to trade up with those guys. So that's up there as well. So the Redskins kind of playing a little chess here with the NFL draft. And it can work out either way. Like I said, it works out for the Lions no matter what, because if they do draft Tua, then the Lions get Chase Young. And if the Dolphins trade up to the number 2 pick and draft Tua, then the Lions get Chase Young. So the Lions, no matter what, the Lions will gain a great defensive lineman here if the Redskins are bluffing, or if the Redskins are not bluffing and they actually do want Tua. Now, if they are bluffing and the Dolphins don't bite on it, then the Redskins will, of course, get Chase Young, and then the Lions' hopes are dead. So I just thought this was interesting. It is just a rumor at the moment, but there was a lot of talks of them meeting with all these different quarterback prospects throughout Combine Week, and there is definitely an interest in the Redskins acquiring a quarterback here in the draft. Like I said, Dwayne Haskins didn't do too hot. And I mean, they don't have faith in him. And the new GM, new coach, they seem to not have faith in him. The team, he kind of lost the team a little bit last year as well. Dwayne Haskins did, as you had some player. There's video of players being annoyed by his pumped up speeches or anything like that, which I think that's more to do with the culture of the Redskins more than anything, that they are getting mad at their rookie quarterback trying to get the team hyped up and trying to win a game. But Redskins do need a left tackle, as they have that issue with their current left tackle right now. Ron Rivera might change that up, but the Redskins have a lot of problems going on with their culture and stuff like that. Ron Rivera can easily come in there and change all of that. He built a great culture in Carolina for the Panthers, and it might be the best move to move on from Dwayne Haskins, but it's kind of unfair. But you're going to start seeing this more and more, as you saw with the Cardinals, when a team gets their guy, supposedly, go the whole year and it turns out not to be their guy, they're going to get another guy. The patience for quarterbacks is at an all-time low in the NFL. So yeah, teams are not going to be wasting their time on these rookie quarterbacks that don't immediately fill all their needs. They're looking for day one starters, stuff like that. So when we return, I'm going to give an overall XFL update. We're going to talk about how the play on the field is, what are how the new rules are going. We'll discuss all that when we return from the break.
Are you looking to get your college football fixed? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football, from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
The XFL has completed their 4th week of play. And overall, how is it? Now, I know there's some people that probably haven't been watching, probably don't care about the XFL, probably just watching NBA and stuff like that and just waiting for baseball season to start or waiting for real football to start back up. But now, of course, I'm going to discuss the XFL as a whole. I'm not going to discuss any teams or anything like that, as my weekly power rankings are in the next segment. So I will be talking about all the teams and how they did this past weekend. That will be in the next segment. This is talking about the league as a whole. How has the league been doing so far? I was going to kind of save this for next week because next week's kind of the halfway mark of the season. But I thought it's worth to talk about now. So let's get into it. So the biggest issue with the XFL so far, a lot of people have been having, is the QB, the quarterback issue. So besides teams like the Houston Roughnecks, St. Louis Battlehawks, where they have a quarterback that's pretty efficient, gets the job done. Of course, I'm talking about PJ Walker and Teemu for the Battlehawks. Those two are easily the best quarterbacks in the XFL. The Dallas Renegades had Landry Jones. Landry Jones was a pretty solid quarterback. But then after that, you have QB controversy after QB controversy. You used to have Cardale Jones, but after this past week, past 2 weeks, Cardale Jones has kind of fell off a cliff so far. But the LA Wildcats, they found their guy in Josh Johnson. The New York Guardians have been flipping through different quarterbacks because Matt McGloin got hurt. Tampa Bay lost a quarterback. They lost Quinton Flowers. He quit from the team. Seattle Dragons are trying different quarterbacks out now. Dallas Renegades just lost Landry Jones, now that I think about it. So there is a drop-off in the XFL when it comes to quarterbacks. But my argument against that is that, I mean, there's also a drop-off in the NFL. It's very difficult to think of all the quarterbacks in the NFL. And there's, of course, teams that are struggling with quarterbacks, like the Miami Dolphins. They're struggling with quarterback Jameis Winston for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's a struggle. Carolina Panthers were struggling with the quarterback with Cam Newton being out. And yeah, so I mean, there is always quarterback discrepancies going through the NFL. So I think the quarterback issue is not really that big of a deal in the XFL. You got to remember, these are guys that are like fringe guys on NFL rosters. So at best, most of the quarterbacks starting are probably backup guys for the NFL. PJ Walker might be earning himself some money, though, with the way he's been playing. Teemu's probably earning himself a backup spot because he's been pretty solid so far. He hasn't really wowed anybody. He's made a couple good throws, but he hasn't really wowed anybody so far in the XFL. But he's done good enough to probably earn himself a backup spot on an NFL team if they really want him. But PJ Walker might have secured himself, maybe at least fighting for a position in the preseason and stuff like that. So quarterback issues, yeah, I understand the issue. I understand the discrepancy there, but I think the rest of the play on the field is good enough where it kind of makes up for it, and that's where we'll move on to overall play in general. So the games have been pretty exciting. You've had some blowouts, but I mean, you always have blowouts in general in football. It doesn't matter where you watch football, there's blowouts in general. But it's been pretty exciting to watch. There's been some really good games so far. Like, I mean, you had Battlehawks versus the Roughnecks in week 2, which was a 28-24 game. And then even this past week, you had a pretty good game between Houston and Dallas, which was 27-20. You had a good game between Seattle and St. Louis, which was 23-16. You had good games between Houston and Tampa Bay last week. Now, of course, there are some stinkers like DC Defenders losing 39-9, or DC Defenders losing 25-0, or the Guardians losing 27-0. There are stinkers, of course, and I mean, that's just how it is. When you're playing week in, week out, I don't think there is a bye week for these teams, so you're playing week in, week out, so teams are going to have bad moments, and that's why I do the power rankings, to try to get a better grasp of where everybody is. And the power rankings are ever changing, and when we get to the next segment, you'll see that there's huge changes even in just a 2-week span in the XFL. I mean, Guardians had a 2-game losing streak where they lost 27-0 and then 29-9, and then they came out and beat the LA Wildcats 17-14. So it's ever changing. There's different teams. The different teams, everybody's still trying to get a footing. Everybody's still trying to get used to it. But overall play of the field, I'm pretty excited about. Now let's move on to the rules. How are the rules working out? Let's start off with the kickoff rule. A lot of people really like the new kickoff rule for the XFL. I'm kind of getting used to it now. There's only been one kickoff return for a touchdown, which is the St. Louis Battlehawks. Did that last week. They had a kickoff return for a touchdown off of a reverse. But I definitely do see teams getting a little bit more creative with how the kickoff works. I think it's just kind of getting used to how it works before people start figuring out good strategies to put on there. So the kickoff rule really works. The point after touchdown, I think that's what it's called, rule is also pretty interesting. The first 3 weeks, no one went for 3 points, which kind of bothered me. There was literally one team that scored a touchdown. They were down, I think they were down 10 after they scored the touchdown. No, they were down like 12 after they scored the touchdown. They could have went for 3 and made it a one-score game, because you can score 9 points on one touchdown. They could have went for 3, but then they went for 2 instead, which didn't make sense at all. And then there's teams that could have went up. I'm under the impression you should go for 3 almost every time. But some teams are definitely using it just as a last case scenario. But this past week, there was a lot more 3-point conversion, 3-point tries at least. And I think that's another thing where teams are just trying to get used to it. But I did think it was really stupid that teams weren't going for 3 as much as they should have. Especially sometimes it was just not a good idea to not go for 3, and they still didn't. They went for 2 or went for 1 in a scenario where they could have made it a 9-point game and made it a 1-score affair. But stuff like that. That's interesting. So the Sky Ref, the transparency and all that when it comes to flags and challenges and stuff, it's pretty interesting. It's nice to have. It's just like a nice extra thing. It doesn't have to be. It's not necessary, but it's a nice extra thing to have, and it makes for great football to watch, because if you're not sure why they did the thing that they did, and then they explain why they did the thing, explain why they overturned the call or stuff like that, you at least get the thought process, and it kind of humanizes the refs in that way, where you kind of understand how they reached the conclusion that they reached. So I really like that aspect. So we'll move on to the ratings. That's kind of the biggest part of this. So it's kind of different from the AAF. The AAF wasn't partnered with any of these big. They weren't partnered with ESPN or with Fox Sports. They were partnered with CBS Sports and the NFL Network, and they were put on random times every week. With the ESPN and Fox, they're put on 2 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and then on Sunday it's 2 o'clock, 6 o'clock, or something like that. They are on the same time on the same channel every single week, and that is pretty nice. I mean, that's how the NFL is. NFL at 1 o'clock, you have a game. At 4:25, you have another game. And then at 8:30 at Sunday night, you have another game. That continuity helps, because then if you're just sitting around doing nothing on a Sunday and it's 3 o'clock, you're like, oh, the XFL's on. So that helps. Their ratings, not the best, but they're outrating NBA games, which is a good start at least. That's going to get more advertisements their way. Overall, it's still a good. They're a lot more structured than the AAF is. They're not. I haven't heard any money issues, because I remember halfway through the AAF season there was a lot of money issues going on. So I haven't heard any bankruptcy rumors or anything like that. I haven't heard anything about players having to purchase their own flights or anything like that. So business-wise, they're doing great. But the real question is, are you still watching? I'm still watching. I unfortunately wasn't able to catch any of the games this past week, but what I did Monday morning was look up highlights so I can put together my power rankings. Now, of course, that's kind of my job, but I wanted to watch. I wanted to see how the teams did. I have a fantasy football league with my friends, and I want to make sure I'm getting, which, by the way, I whiffed on all of my on my drafts because we drafted before official rosters were released, but so I whiffed on literally everyone I drafted do not play. So I had to pick up like all the new players. But anyways, I got lucky and picked up PJ Walker. I know you don't care, but I mean, it's fun to watch. It's still there. It's football. At least it gets through because during this time of year is definitely usually my hockey time where I start watching hockey a little bit more. So it's nice to have a little XFL to kind of change things up. But when we return, I'll be doing my weekly XFL power rankings. Stay tuned.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and one championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
I discussed how the XFL was doing overall, but let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Let's talk about the actual teams. It is this week's XFL Power Rankings. Now, the top three teams did not change at all, but the bottom five, the rest of the league, there were some mix-ups. I actually had some issues putting some teams where they needed to be, so there might be some. This list is interesting. This week is interesting because there were some teams that impressed me. There were some teams that didn't really impress me, but they won, so I kind of felt like I had to move them up, stuff like that, and it just kind of made the whole process a little weird. But let's talk about the guys that didn't move. They're staying where they are. They stayed put. Let's talk about the number one team in the XFL, the Houston Roughnecks. They are 4-0. They've won the Battle of Texas. They beat the Dallas Renegades 27-20. PJ Walker continues his excellent play, going 25-41, 239 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Holly had 8 catches for 97 yards and a touchdown. They had 307 total offensive yards. Now, they should have won by a lot more. Their defense got 3 interceptions in the first quarter alone against Landry Jones and the Dallas Renegades, but the offense didn't really capitalize on that, which I think they got 2 field goals and a touchdown. They only got like 13 points out of it. So, which is pretty, Dallas Renegades, best defense in the league, in my opinion. So they were facing a tough defense, but you get 3 interceptions, you get 3 takeaways in the first quarter. You got to do a little bit more to pad that lead and make it a little bit more of a blowout, but Houston Roughnecks pulled it out. It got a little close down the stretch there. St. Louis Battlehawks are number 2. They stay put. They are 3-1 after they beat the Seattle Dragons 23-16. Ta'amu went 20 for 27 with 264 yards, staying in his efficient self. I don't think there's a single game this year where he had more than 10 incomplete passes. He had 1 touchdown, and he also had 63 yards rushing. He had a 34-yard rushing touchdown, but he was running all over the place. He was extending plays and getting first downs and keeping the offense alive. Pearson L had 5 catches for 71 yards. Then they had 392 total yards, 133 rushing, 259 passing, as St. Louis continues their reign as the best rushing attack in the XFL. And like I said, so their defense did okay. They were facing a Seattle Dragons team that switched quarterbacks, and their defense could have done a little better. I mean, at the end of the day, they only gave up 2 touchdowns, but still, solid game. St. Louis stays at number 2. Number 3, staying put, is the Dallas Renegades. Now, even though they lost to Houston 27-20, their defense kept them in the game long enough. Landry Jones threw 3 interceptions in the first quarter. After that, they kind of came out with a decent game offensively after the first quarter ended. Landry Jones went 25-38 with 205 yards and a touchdown, and then, of course, you had those 3 interceptions. Nagel had 6 catches for 76 yards. Parham had 6 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown. And like I said, their defense got an interception off of P.J. Walker and kept Dallas in the game so their offense can come back. Landry Jones, unfortunately, got injured. He injured his knee towards the end of the game. So we'll see. We'll monitor that status and see if he starts for the Renegades next week. It's looking a little unlikely, as it looked like a brutal injury. He got kind of stuck in a pile and someone landed on his knee. So we'll see how he is later this week when we get updates. Number 4, like I said, these next guys, I was struggling. I'm going to be honest with you. I was struggling finding where to put some of these teams. And now it could have been easy where you just put the 2-2 teams up there. Well, there's only one other 2-2 team, and that was the New York Guardians, and they played like crap the past 2 weeks. So anyways, Seattle Dragons are my number 4 team. They lost to St. Louis Battlehawks 23-16. The Dragons have been close in every single game, and it looks like they finally figured out their quarterback issue. They played 2 different quarterbacks. They played Daniels and Silvers. Silvers started the game. He went 4 for 10 for 27 yards. Then they brought in Bryce Daniels, and he went 5 for 10 for 100 yards and a touchdown. He threw an interception, but he also had 84 rushing yards. The offense just overall looked better with Daniels in the game, and Seattle's defense played pretty well against the St. Louis rushing attack. So Seattle Dragons, they kind of impressed me the most. They're 1-3, but they've kind of been improving. Just like this next team, number 5, the Tampa Bay Vipers. Now, Tampa Bay was last place just a couple weeks ago. They moved up to number 5 here. They moved up 2 spots to be number 5. They're 1-3. They beat DC Defenders 25-0 in a shocking game. They finally got the results that they wanted. So I noticed in week 1, their offense was pretty good. They just couldn't score. Week 2 was more of the same, where their defense scored and then their offense was still struggling to score. Last week, they finally broke the barrier and scored some touchdowns and lost in a very close game because of defense. And then this week, their offense went insane and scored 477 total offensive yards. Cornelius seems to be their quarterback. They had Aaron Murray, and then they went to Quentin Flowers for a little bit. Quentin Flowers quit the team. Now Cornelius is the guy there, and he went 24-31 with 211 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and he also had 36 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. He had a gutsy play where he scrambled to his right and got hit as he got into the end zone and got a touchdown there. Davion Smith had 24 rushes for 122 yards. Jaquez Patrick had 21 rushes for 108 yards. Williams has 7 catches for 72 yards. Tolliver had 4 catches, 45 yards. Defense held defenders to only 107 total yards, 61 passing, 46 rushing. So Tampa Bay, everything finally came together. I legitimately think they're one of the best offensive teams in the league. They just kind of struggled the first 2 weeks, and that's why they were down. But they seem to have things figured out now. So we'll see how they do as the year progresses. But they just keep getting better and better in my eyes. On to number 6, New York Guardians. So the New York Guardians bounced back this week with a win over the LA Wildcats. So New York, past 2 weeks, they got blown out. So they were the last place team last week. They were number 8 on my power rankings last week, but they moved up 2 spots to number 6 after beating the Wildcats. Looks like they found their quarterback in Luis Perez. He went 18-26 for 150 yards and a touchdown. Offense looked pretty solid with him there. Not a lot of mistakes. He didn't throw any interceptions or anything like that. Darius Victor, 18 rushes for 82 yards. Defense held LA Wildcats to only 17% on third downs and held them to only 40 rushing yards. They also sacked the quarterback 4 times in the game, including 8 QB hits. So Guardians defense was all over Josh Johnson and the LA Wildcats, which that is my number 7 team, the LA Wildcats. So they kind of jumped up with their first win last week. Now they're back to where they were 2 weeks ago. They're back at number 7 here. Like I said, it was kind of the Guardians, Wildcats, and Defenders. I mean, they were kind of difficult to place. Tampa Bay was going to be higher up for me because I thought they were pretty good the first few weeks. They just didn't win. So Tampa Bay was a little higher for me personally, but LA Wildcats lost 17-14. Josh Johnson went 25-40 for 330 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. McBride kept up his amazing play with 8 catches for 127 yards and a touchdown. Smallwood had 5 catches for 75 yards. Defense had 3 sacks, 6 QB hits. They only got 22 penalty yards. So, I mean, looking at the box score, you don't really understand why they lost, but then you realize 17% on third downs just ain't going to cut it. Guardians had the possession of the ball just a lot more and just drained that clock with their rushing attack. So, yeah, I mean, LA, all they had to do was just fight back pretty much the whole game, especially after a pretty not good start. Then we move on to number 8. Now, I just want you to know, week 2 power rankings, DC Defenders were number 1. They were number 1 on my power rankings, and here they are at number 2 in just 2 weeks. And the main reason for that is they are 2-2, so they have a better record than LA and Tampa and Seattle. But the past 2 weeks have been so terrible. Last week, Cardale Jones threw 4 interceptions, and they lost to the Wildcats 39-9. This week they lost to Tampa Bay, who everybody was considering one of the worst teams in the league, and they lost 25-0 this week. Cardale Jones went 22-41 for 72 yards, 1 interception. They had nothing going offensively. They couldn't do anything on offense, and their defense couldn't stop anyone to save their lives. There's a bunch of arm tackles, a bunch of missed tackles, a bunch of misplays by the Vipers that were just not capitalized. There was a bunch of plays by the Vipers where the quarterback dropped the ball and then someone else picked it up and they scored. There was one where a Viper player ball bounced off his chest and then another one came in and dove and got the pick. I mean, the Vipers definitely got a little lucky there, but 25-0 is a little bit more than luck. DC Defenders, they have a lot of issues going on. Their past 2 games have been away. Maybe they're just a home team, but we'll see how they do from now on. They dropped a whopping 4 spots, which is the biggest change here in these power rankings so far. Because like I said, they lost by a total. They lost by 20 points last week. They lost by 25 this week. And they looked awful this week. They gave up 477 yards on defense. The offense couldn't do anything. So DC Defenders are now last place in my power rankings. If they win next week, we'll see if they bounce back. Next week, they're facing the Seattle Battlehawks, so a win there will definitely bump them up. Seattle Dragons will face Houston, New York Guardians will face Dallas, and Tampa Bay will face the Wildcats. So there will definitely be a little bit more changes in the power rankings depending on how those games turn out. So there you go. That's it. Thank you for listening, everybody. This was the GSMC Sports Podcast. Like, rate us, review us if you like the show. You can follow me on Twitter at Strickland_Josh, and I hope you have a great rest of your Tuesday. See you Thursday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.